blinded by. Hi guys, and welcome to the newest version of the Q&A. Happens every Sunday. It's normally earlier than this, but at the end of the day, I'm filming it. So we're gonna start with we just been asked on Twitter that why are the Steelers fans in such up? Corey Nielsen, potentially coming to the why are we in such uproar about that? So personally, I don't. He wouldn't the worst manager. Because at the end of the day, he has the experience with the Panthers, and he's obviously been in and around the league for a long time, and he only got sacked on the back of really poor results. So you've got to look at it like that, really. That's how I see it, really. So I personally think he could be he's potentially could be a good appointment, but he didn't win much with the Panthers. And don't quote me on that because I haven't got such a good few technical issues on here. So someone said it's the same as Wimbledon. I personally I don't really know who that is. And again, that's me not watching it. What did I think of last night? Well, obviously we won. Bonus, 2 points, quite sort of influential playoff push. It's not so it's in that situation. And the game itself was actually, I thought it was brilliant. Really, like throughout, I thought it was really really good to watch. Sort of the physicality of the players was really shown throughout the game, and they looked like they really sort of wanted to be a part of that, sort of a part of the whole game day experience, really. And they were throwing hits left, right, and centre. I mean, Jordan Owens, bless him. I mean, I hope someone pops a question about that because I could really get into that, and it frustrated me really because, yeah. And obviously, 2 fights in a game. I think that's like home fights doubled. The tally doubled for the season with 2 fights. So we're now on 4 fights, I think, at home. Chris Lawrence getting a couple, but at the end of the day, I thought last night we really did sort of show what we are capable of, and sort of why. To You've got to take a performance like last night into the rest of this season, because this season's been an absolute nightmare from start to finish. It's been crap. No one's been enjoying it. And last night, he gave a glimpse really of sort of the Steelers of the last sort of 3 seasons ago, really, sort of how they used to play, like less puck playing, sort of more physicality, more wanting to win sort of fights, wanting to get first to every puck, putting hits in. It were entertaining to watch, and it was quite a good sort of a good old fashioned game really against the Blaze. And obviously, as I've said in this video so far, that I haven't watched hockey beyond the last 3 years, so I haven't really ever seen like the most physical side of the game. But last night was excellent, I thought. Hackett Neely incident. So what I thought, okay, Neely Hackett incident. I thought that oh, I thought Hackett should have been thrown out simply because he hit him with the blocker. And I was sat in 105, so sorry, yeah, I don't know where I was at, but I was sat sort of in the lower bowl, and I was basically looking at what were going on. I could see quite clearly what were going on, and I couldn't really understand why you weren't thrown out. But apparently there is a rule sort of on why goalies don't. But he doesn't get thrown out, but he hit him with the blocker, his glove. He continued the fight. He continued punching him when he was down on the ground. When they were both down, and that's what sort of got me a little bit, and that's why I couldn't understand why the other goalie wasn't brought in, and it sort of it soured it for me, to be honest, because the officials seem to they right. I'm going to speak sort of from a football referee's perspective. Incidents like that are what you can really use to your advantage to clamp down on any misconduct. So take it like a fight happens in the middle of the pitch. That is your opportunity to calm everything else down. But the officials didn't. and they chose to sort of keep him in because it'd sort of be a bit of effort for them really. I bet they had to fill in a misconduct report if they were going to file for it. It sort of affects them more than it would the game, and that's sort of why I don't think they looked at the bigger picture for the game, and they just saw it as one particular incident, and they just didn't deal with it correctly, and it did frustrate me a little bit. So we've just had a question asked about Zuccarello in the NHL and a trade between, I think it's the New York Rangers and someone else, but I've, the question, I'll have a look if it's on here. No. Like, that's what happens, like, you know. Um, so, unless that gets asked again, like, I reinstate context, I won't be able to answer that because I don't understand the question, Zuccarello. Somewhat about a trade and what you think about it. Well, I'm guessing it's like quite a big trade if it's been brought up in this video. And obviously, NHL trade is not something that's sort of I know much about because, I support Kings. I don't really look into it that much, like I do the NHL, like I do a lot of research, how it's run, sort of how rules are, like a lot of research into that because at the end of the day, I need to know because to do these videos and to do all this because the context just won't be there. So that's all I can answer for that. Like, it might seem such an off answer really, but I didn't understand the question. Yeah, I think it should have been sent out. I'll retouch on this. He should have been sent out. I think I was sat in 115, 115. Yeah, so I'm sort of bang on, sort of with the face off circle, if you like. So it was a terrible sort of decision really to keep him on the ice because they had a backup keeper, and the keeper that hits someone with the blocker and punches them repeatedly while they're on the ground. Somewhat if that. So someone playing at winger and they were punching someone repeatedly while they're on the floor, they're getting a match penalty for fighting. You know, so I don't understand why the same doesn't apply to the keepers when they are literally hitting people with something that weighs a lot more than a glove. Like, if I punch someone with one of my hockey gloves down here, that doesn't hurt. If you whack them over the head with like a stupid goalie glove that's made of rubber, and oh god, I don't even know who was playing. Um, it's got to be DeLuca. It has got to be DeLuca because he got brought in as someone that wasn't really well known. He got brought in as someone who didn't raise expectations at all. Um, and he's now actually turned it around completely and he's become sort of a player that we all expected him to be. And with all credit to him, he's done an excellent job. He's come into a struggling, and he's not really a player that's a first line attacker. He's a third liner, but he's really stepping up his game just to suit us and to sort of make us a lot better. Really, going forward, he's excellent. You saw the goal yesterday and how much it means to me. He celebrates along the floor, then jumps into Blaze fans. Incredible. Means or both on a Jackie Potato. I recognise that name. I quite like that. Do you need any help with your blog, Jed? And what was the other one? Yeah, so Anthony DeLuca is my I can't have cheese, by the way. I'm lactose intolerant. But yeah, Anthony DeLuca is my favourite Steelers player. Coventry Blaze scoring in the last minute. I didn't see that. Um, them cheer. I saw them cheer. I saw them all get up. But I couldn't understand it because the buzzer had already gone. So I don't actually know if anything happened. Sort of if it did go over the line or out, but it didn't because I'd have been right frustrated if they scored in the last minute yesterday after we had a 4-1 lead. I'd have been absolutely furious. And obviously we've got questions like cheese or beans on a Jackie Potato. It'd have to be beans. It has to be beans. Cheese, lactose intolerance. Can't be doing with that, can I? Won't want my stomach feeling quite bad. So, yeah, that's my view on it. And I'm gonna quickly like and sort of nip back because obviously I'll keep going back over the questions and so the Hackett incident as well. Um, as I've said, hitting someone over the head with a blocker, it's bound to hurt. Hitting him with goalie glove is bound to hurt. You know, and Neely didn't even look like he really wanted that fight. And the Blaze goalie was just like sort of he was the one who instigated it, so then for instigator at the end because nothing's really happened to start it until he punched Neely. So that should be a 2+10 for instigator, plus a match penalty for hitting someone with a blocker, plus everything else on top of that, plus repeatedly punching him. And Jordan Owens is the one who's gone out of that game with a 3-game suspension. And Matt has got absolute because Dops are just a joke. Why do Glasgow always seem to dominate us? I just think it is genuinely down to Glasgow being a better side than us. And it is evident in the league table. They're doing incredible. Season. I don't. I'd have to have a look back, sort of where I predicted the teams, sort of going into the season. But Glasgow, I don't think were up there. They might even be. They had a bit of a crap season the season before, and that sort of I took from that sort of what might happen this season. But people were saying that they didn't want Pete Russell as coach, but Pete Russell for Britain, and he did a good enough job for the MK Lightning. Really, he with the team he had at MK last season, he did a really good job, and I don't understand sort of why people sort of knocked him quite a lot, sort of said he wasn't good enough to join the Steelers, when in reality he could have quite easily turned this season around. Tom Barrasso's done well with what he has. He doesn't have an excellent side. He doesn't have a side that looks like they're going to compete week in, week out. And, I've completely lost track of where I was going with this question. Completely lost track of where I was going with it. But, I'm sorry about that, but I've lost track of where I went with that question. I need to start writing it down. I'm going to start writing these down. Okay. If you could bring in another reality, I'd say Pete Russell or Paul Dixon. That's come at a good time. Pete Russell. That's got me out of jail, really, for that question. Because I don't understand why I didn't get Pete Paul Dixon. Personally, because Pete Russell is working with a group of players who are all sort of middle of the pack players. They're not all great. They're not all sort of outstanding. They're all seven what they'll put in for you on a match day, and he's working with them, and it's really showing sort of the enthusiasm that Glasgow have going forward. It's brilliant. I didn't actually go to both games where they beat us by 12-1 overall on the Wednesday night and the Saturday night when they beat us 6-0 and 6-1. I didn't go to both of them games literally by chance, and it happens to be sort of them games that I sort of prefer to see because I want to see sort of how that side plays. But their results and the highlights that I've seen of the Clan throughout the season that aren't really that great on paper and in the performances. They've got sort of like Brendan Connolly, and he did well for the Giants last season, and he's coming to the Clan side and sort of reshape them a little bit going forward. And it's players like that you need, sort of the players that maybe sometimes have an off day, maybe sometimes don't, but as long as they're willing to perform under that coach, then it's good to watch, really. Glasgow, so it would be Pete Russell. You can't sort of overlook what he's done with Guildford because they're not really such a talented side. They've got a couple of good players, and they've got sort of players who could potentially be sort of, I don't know, if they conjured up a good run, they could do something really to the league. But at the end of the day, until you get that, they're not gonna, because Paul Dixon obviously isn't. He isn't too great, and he's definitely not as good as Pete Russell. So Definitely Pete Russell for me. Dops, does it sort of deflect players from coming to the league? So, I mean, the Jordan Owens thing, the 3 match ban, I think it's a bit of a joke, really. I don't think it's even worth. I think it's worth one game, but for the reaction, really, I think if there wasn't a reaction, I don't even think it'd be. I'm not being funny, and that's what people can look at, sort of how they deal with situations, why it's such inconsistency, and sort of how it could be prevented in the future. But there's no long term plans or short term plans to try and make DOPS better. In the previous season, they did have plans in place. They brought in the people overseas. They told them to look at it, and the thing that kicked it all off was called hammering Spyro Galocus to the head from behind. Sorry, to the back from behind. That's the thing that started all the DOP stuff, and I can't understand why we no longer have people who oversaw DOPS last season, and it really frustrates me because with a good quality DOPS, the league could really move forward with a consistent sort of consistency in banning players. It'd eradicate the sort of horrible hits, and the chase at the head. It'd eradicate it because players won't want to do it because they know full well they're going to get banned. But the inconsistency is just dreadful because Jane and Rislin for the Panthers the other day did a hit sort of similar to the one that Jordan Owens did, just a different angle, and he gets 6 games. I think it was, he was a Manchester Storm player the other week. He got 1 game for checking to that, and now Jordan Owens has got 3 games, and what I don't even know. It's just frustrating. So, best Steelers forward. I'd say I'm not being funny, but he always seems to add something, and every time he comes back from injury, he always seems like a new player, sort of a new signing, someone to get in straight away. He's sort of good in that regard, and I like him a lot, to be honest. And he's obviously one of our standout Brits that we cannot sort of afford to get rid of. And if we did end up sort of losing him, I think it'd be an absolutely monumentally big hole to fill. And if we didn't sort of get, obviously, it'd be replaceable almost because there aren't any really British players much better than Robert Dowd, in the league as a forward. I'll look at it like so. Robert Dowd for me is my sort of favourite Steelers forward and best Steelers forward. Arguably Tanner Ebeli or DeLuca. DeLuca, just mainly. Ebeli adds something different completely to both them players. So yeah, either DeLuca or Dowd really for best Steelers forward. And obviously I'm not overlooking his other forwards because some of them really do put a shift in, but quality wise you've got to look at Dowd really, primarily anyway. Obviously you pointed out the fact that Tom Barrasso has gone from NHL officiating to IH. That won't be something that Tom Barrasso has overlooked, like in to join the Steelers, obviously in the coaching position. Because when you join a new job, you're going to look at sort of how the league sort of is, how it like looks on paper, and you've got to sort of look between the lines, like what goes on in this league, how is it run, and Barrasso won't have come into the league not expecting a sort of like he'll understand sort of the past events that may have happened and the sort of the things that take place really in the league. You've even got to compare it to the likes of the Colin Frere incident, and you've got to look at that, and there will be newspaper reports about it. There will be newspaper reports about it, and then you've got to look at that, and Barrasso would have looked at that, and he'd have seen sort of what happened, and he'll have known what he was dealing with. And so I don't think it'll drive many people away if they understand what they're coming into, but it'll drive away if they get it and they're like, Jesus Christ, how bad is this? That's sort of what what will affect people more than anything, not reading into sort of how the league's run and how it's sort of set out to be and what people think of it. So that's my opinion on that. Sheffield Wednesday or Sheffield United? Sheffield Wednesday, obviously. You know, I'm not a United fan. Wouldn't want to be a United fan. So, yeah. We're a Wednesday, aren't we? Isn't that right? So, yeah. Sidetrack there, obviously, but at the end of the day, not many people are in this. So obviously, I understand it's quite late. Um, we'll keep talking, really. I will enjoying getting into that, really. No. Mouth's dry. Um, as I was saying, really, about sort of Barrasso, the way you came into it at first, and I, I sort of respected that, really, because Thompson obviously used to talk about the officials a lot, and he used to sort of say a lot of bad things, really, about them, and I do think that that deflects badly upon the league, sort of, if coaches are constantly talking about the officials and how bad they are. Sort of, if there's that sort of understanding that they might be under par, sort of under average, really, then the league would progress. People shouldn't be expecting the officials to be absolutely brilliant, because at the end of the day, there is, I'm going to go into this. There's a massive timescale, really, of what you can do with these officials, and you could look at it over a course of 5 years, how you can progress the officials to the point in 5 years' time. And how you can do that is obviously new officials coming in, current NIHL officials, if you give them the correct training over the course of that 5 years, by the end of the 5 years, you will get excellent officiating. And in a lot of sports, there's always different sort of schemes set up to try and improve the officiating, but I've never ever seen one for hockey. And it is a sport in this country that really needs to have some kind of sort of emphasis put on the officials and sort of how yeah, so obviously this question's actually come at a good time. This is sort of what I'm saying. Training programs, sort of courses, meetings, everything really to be put in place could quite easily change the league's officiating status, really. And people sort of don't, if they buy into it or not remains to be seen. But the officiating standard has to improve, and it really does has to improve, because it will detract from the players who come into the league, and it will ultimately affect the sort of status of the league. But we have got to sort of look at it like a sort of future plans sort of thing, rather than rather than an immediate set plan. You've just got to plan ahead for the future, because a lot of people have been saying different stuff about the style of officiating and the sort of how crap it's been really this season. It's very sort of poor. And do I think they're too strict on fighting? Yeah, because obviously at the start of all the vidcast stuff I said about no fighting and stuff like that, and blame for the officials just getting too involved. For years in hockey, there's been fights in a lot of games, and the fact that the officials get so involved sort of really quickly detracts from the atmosphere, really. And that's not what you want. You want to be sort of really involved. You want to feel motivated. But if you know that all the officials are just gonna, but if the officials get in the way of all the sort of rough and ready, fighting, roughing, it sort of detracts from the atmosphere. And if they were to improve, I think they'd just sort of take a step back and just let it happen. I think they'd have better control if they did let that happen. But by just getting in the way of it, it sort of doesn't diffuse it. It adds to it more, because people want to drop the gloves more. They want to get that opportunity to drop the gloves with the person that they've not been able. So I think that sort of I think it sort of sums up sort of how quick the officials are to try and diffuse conflict. But in truth, they should just concentrate on their own game, really. Um, do you think someone other than me will ask a question? Well, at the end of the day, it remains to be seen. I try and obviously put a lot of stuff out on Twitter to get people involved in the live streams. But sometimes live streams are hard for people to watch and they just rather watch it back. And I've got no problem with that, but I like it when people sort of watch it in time because, it sort of adds to it a little bit. And it sort of helps me answer the questions a little bit more. Obviously, we've got 3 viewers in here, one of them being my girlfriend, and one of them, and probably 2 of them being quite sort of regular people, really. So, I'll sort of have like 20 seconds or so. If you want to get any questions in, please feel free, really. I ate late at night, I'm really tired. Oh dear. Obviously, if there's no. Well, I wasn't there. So, the issue is, I don't really know what happened. But what I do know is 2 goals were wiped out. And having 2 goals wiped out in any night is going to kill a side. And by kill, I mean kill. I mean literally, it's just going to wipe out any sort of momentum. And yes, they've probably been wiped out for a legitimate reason, but by the reaction on Twitter, I don't see a legitimate reason. Poor officiating, expected officiating for the league, and as I've touched upon, you've got to sort of cut it out really, all the sort of negativity, not from the fans, but if the officials had a bit more competence, then the negativity surrounding them would just be eradicated. You know, that's what people have got to realise. Sort of, if the officials did anything about it, it I don't really know. The fans would respond to it better. The fans would be more interested. I've seen a lot of fans sort of quit watching hockey because of the sort of way that it's been officiated. So, what's been my favourite game of this season? Probably Coventry Blaze Halloween game when we was 4-2 down and we ended up winning 5-4 in overtime with O'Connor going around the keeper. I thought that were excellent because at 4-2 down, normally the Steelers would just pack in. But the fact is, it was one of Barrasso's first games, and to fight back sort of from 4-2 down to end up winning 5-4, just excellent. Really, it proved sort of that we do have it in us to produce a fight back with the players that we have, and the players that we have aren't great. So to have that sort of, to see sort of what we're capable of, it was good, but it was also quite frustrating at the same time because you're thinking like, if we were sort of more up for it early in the season, then maybe we won't be in the position we are now. And obviously it's easy for me to say as a fan, but we haven't been the quality that we have in the previous seasons that I've been watching hockey. And I just found it a bit frustrating, really. That, we do have it in us to win. It's games like that where we look down now, but we end up winning the game. And, I just really do wish that we'd do it more often. Worst player for the Steelers. Now, this is a tough one because I don't really think there are the worst player. I think they're all as bad as each other. Like, not in a bad way, but there's not really a standout worst player because they haven't been really the standard that we sort of expected. And I think the worst, again, it's hard to say worse. Like, there's not someone on the top of my head that I can look at sort of and think, Christ, he's the worst player on this side. He does not deserve that Steelers jersey. Because a lot of them, they're not good enough. And I think they recognise that they're not good enough, and you sort of, and it does disrupt from the game because some players just seem to give up because it's like, well, what's the point if I'm not good enough, you know? And I don't think there is realistically a worse player. You could have an argument for Sylvester Silikis when he played for us. He was, you know, I think he played about 3 passes, and I don't know. Okay, I'll answer that one. Which player do you think has improved the most? Improved the most over the course of the season, or improve sort of. If you're looking at sort of short-term improvements, well, long-term improvements, I'd say Brown Whistle. I feel quite for Brown Whistle. Keep or get rid. I didn't even mention him. I'd keep him because at the end of the day, I think he's been good, and he's not the most gifted player, but he puts so much effort into every game, and because sometimes players aren't sort of bothered if they're not good enough. And as I've said, you know, some players don't believe in themselves enough, and they sometimes recognise that they're not good enough. But Brandon Whistle seems to recognise that he may be that sort of level below, but he tries so hard. So improved over the course of the season, it's got to be Brandon Whistle. Improved short term, it's got to be DeLuca. Because he came in as a bit sort of hit and miss, you know, and yeah. So in pre-season, it's as though we won the league or going to win the league. I mean, in pre-season there is sort of a I don't know, expectancy, if you like, sort of creeps into the fans, as though what we're seeing now is what we're going to see throughout the season. And obviously, when watching the games throughout the season, we've known that's not the case. The team that played Lexlands the first game, you know, in pre-season, we were excellent. We played really well. We ended up beating a side that we weren't expected to beat, and I think it really showed sort of what we were capable of. And this is why it's so frustrating when we're losing most games and we're not picking up the results that we need to. And yeah, I do agree that sort of we do have sort of real big expectancies, really. But at the end of the day, they only come because sort of we expect us to be better than we are, because we had our expectations completely raised from, you know, squads in the past, you know, with Fretoir, Nelson, all really good players. They win in the league, you know, year after year, winning the playoffs. Then you come into sort of last season against Manchester Storm and Coventry pre-season, against Solitalia, Nuremberg Ice Tigers. You know, they're all good sides, and we were always holding our own against them. And if we played like we did in those pre-season friendlies against those teams, like we do in matches, and this season again, sort of Timra, Lexlands, I only saw one Timra game, but in that one Timra game, we actually looked okay. We looked average. We scored a goal. You know, I was quite happy with that because I didn't expect us to score. And I was in Norfolk the day before. Sorry, this is last year. I was in Cromer in Norfolk. Not this year, like this pre-season, but the season before, pre-season before. I was in Cromer and I was having to face a 4-hour drive home. And I said to my mum and dad, like, can you drop me off at our Sheffield? Because I were really sort of wanting to see us sort of play against Nuremberg Ice Tigers. And the game we played against them and lost 4-2, I thought we were absolutely excellent all over the ice. Games like that when you sort of get your expectancies raised of the season. But then that's why it's so disappointing when the side don't actually perform that well. And that's really why I think the sort of fans get a lot frustrated. But they also do consider that we're going to win the league. But in truth, we are far from the sort of capability of Belfast and Dell at the minute. And obviously those years will come back, and the years you'll look back on it like those with the about 17, 18, 18, 19, and you've got to sort of look at it in long term. Like you have got to look at the officiating in the long term. It's got to sort of be, it's got to be right for the Steelers. You've got to pick your moments. You've got to sort of really to sort of pounce upon and hopefully get towards that sort of league winning sort of level again. And yeah, so that's what I think. I just think as expectations get raised. Expectancies, what's that? Expectations just get completely raised. And I'm gonna call a halt to this Q&A here because I'm absolutely knackered. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you watch back on it. Are gonna enjoy it. And I hope to see you next weekend again.